I don't mind at all. Sure. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's oh God, I can't even speak, advisory design panel. We are holding this on the traditional territories of the Squamish Nation. Our first item up is an adoption of today's agenda. Can I get anyone to move that? Sarah and Andrew with the second. Lovely. Second item up is an adoption of the committee minutes from the February 19th meeting. And the recommendation is that the advisory design panel adopt the minutes. Can I have anyone? Sarah? Yep. And any second to adopt those minutes? Kim? Awesome. All in agreement? Yes, I'm seeing nodded heads. Okay, great. I am now about to recuse myself because I am the proponent on the first project and John is here. So I will hand it to Jessie Fletcher, Manager of Current Planning.
Thank you and good afternoon, Advisory Design Panel. My name is Jessie Fletcher, Manager of Current Planning, and I'm here to introduce development permit number 643 for the Oceanfront. The project is titled Residential 2. It contains 308 dwelling units across 2 buildings located on the Squamish Oceanfront and falls within areas A, the Village Center, and area D, Mamquam Waterfront, within the CD 69 zone. The proposed development is subject to development permit area 12, the Squamish Oceanfront, including the general commercial and mixed use development permit guidelines, general residential guidelines, Mamquam Waterfront guidelines, and the Village Center guidelines. This project has not previously been presented to advisory design panel in the past. Excuse me, and staff are generally supportive of the site plan and are specifically requesting ADP's recommendations on building form and character and landscaping. I'll hand it over now to the project team. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. My name is Luke Tyson. I'm an architect with Stark Architecture on the project. I'm joined today by
Madison Kelly, also with Stark Architecture. I work as a technologist on the project.
And Kevin Klassen with HAPA Collaborative, landscape architect on the project.
I'm just going to share my screen with you. And
so that beam is not that it was when it was.
Okay. I'll get started. It's quite a comprehensive and large project, so I'll try and be brief while relatively detailed for you all. I just like to start by introducing the Squamish Oceanfront, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. However, I'll just jump into it quite quickly. It's located on the southern peninsula of Squamish and surrounded by the oceanfront. The site is located on kind of centrally, but on the Mamquam side of the Squamish Oceanfront on the Mamquam Channel. The main edge of it will be on that waterfront, and the western side is adjacent to Squawkus Landing Road, which is the road that takes you all the way down to the Oceanfront Brewery right now. And the project's somewhat unique in that it kind of encompasses 2 of the areas, the A type, which is the village area to the south, and that's located around the park, and the north, which is the D type, which is the Muse. And so that's got a more of a character that's larger in scale, stepping up to a 6-story type. I've just taken a moment here to acknowledge a couple of the existing projects that are here, or lately proposed ones. So there is Carbon Engineering to the north of the site, which is industrial, the Squamish Oceanfront Presentation Center and House of Lager Brewery, which is on the south, adjacent to the park, and then the proposed projects, which is Residential 1 and Works 1 to the west-hand side of the corner. The general character of Squamish is being taken into account here, given that we are creating a new development area and community in Squamish. So a couple of the items on the top you'll see are taken from the surrounding area. So we're taking influence from the sailing, the granite, and the mountains around Squamish, the local character that you see in downtown South, which sees a lot of craftsman style red shake, green shake, maritime industrial, and with nods to the industrial nature and the industry of lumber that's in the area. This informs the material palette of the project with some folded metal panels which are fluted and an off-white color, finished concrete, and then the two color palettes which distinguish the two buildings, which was a green, like a pop of green, and a burnt sienna, sort of off-red, and natural wood products. The surrounding area and the precedents that we've used have also informed the design of the building using clean forms while using those pops of color and minimal articulation to create somewhat of a holistic vision across the development while also allowing it to appropriate itself to the different neighborhood characters in the oceanfront. Here's some general concept strategies for the building. So the intent is to really define and articulate the canopies around the level 1, which also has the color strategy applied to it. The canopies around the level 1, are continuous around the residential and commercial edges. Again, also the massing above has been differentiated by materiality and has the metal panels applied to it. The massing has been arranged to have the higher massing on more of the north side to enhance views and also increase solar gain, while also pushing down the mass to the waterfront side here. As you can see, the volumes on the right-hand side of each massing are somewhat lower. And then in addition to that, the roof lines are articulated to correspond with the general forms and stepping up from the waterfront all the way up to the 6-story Muse character, which is more on the northern aspects of the project. The materials and color have a refined color palette to help enhance the massing. So each one is individually informed by its color and materiality, and using simple colors and textures to inform the use. We see the natural wood applied to the smaller residential portions, the green portions applied to the lower level 1 and commercial, and then also accentuated up through the rhythm of balconies. I just take a moment to further the massing that it on the villa, the villa and the waterfront side. You see the massing. I'm assuming you guys can see my mouse here, but the villas are lower on the waterfront side here, and the townhomes are also dropped lower to respond to the village characteristics, which we see on the south side of the waterfront. The 6-story elements are all arranged up on the northern side and actually correspond to those neighboring proposed developments. The residential 1 project, which is here just western to it on Kitty Corner, is a 5-story building on that edge, and the residential 2, which is this project that we're working on, has a similar massing to respond to that. Works 1 is a 4-story commercial building and has a similar height. So as residential 2 steps up to the north, it intends to respond to the future characteristics of the oceanfront. This is just an overall site plan view, which you can see on the left-hand edge. We have the main Sporkus Landing. To the south, we have Village Crescent, which we have proposed commercial aspects along this. The main portion of the building on this area is 3 stories, which is lower for the Village Crescent and has the 2 levels of residential above it. The remainder is a 5 to 6-story residential use. The level 1 of the south and the north building, aside from this village area where it's commercial, is intended to be residential and for access purposes. This is the site plan for the south building. Just to go over that again, is the residential portions are surrounding each edge of the roads, and then the commercial has a activated streetscape which runs around the entire south portion of the building. It then transfers to a centralized amenity building, which we'll refer to later, and then moves around onto the Mamcram foreshore walkway, which has some residential 2-story villas which are aligned along it. The north building is very similar. However, there is no commercial aspect, and instead, in lieu of that, there are residential areas and a second residential lobby. Speaking to the commercial areas here, you can see that we have a 3-story building that's sitting on the south face. The commercial aspect is intended to respond to this residential area, these residential units above. Each commercial unit, to respond to more of a village scale, has been reduced to an approximately 6-meter width or 20 feet width and a continuous rhythm across. There's a continuous canopy connection where the canopy also jigs and jogs and recedes to reflect where the entries are on the building, and also responds to the patios around the edges of the building. Above, the residential areas are also further articulated with the roof forms, which sit on this rhythmic grid. There is also a lighting and signage strategy here, which I'll just gloss really quickly, but we're using darkscape compliant standards, which uplight these green columns, which further accentuate the color scheme and the wayfinding around the site. Moving from the commercial, which is much more open and green strategy, it starts to become a bit more enclosed. The canopy depths are further articulated, and you will start to find more planted edges along the main roadside. Each patio is lifted up by 3 risers, which helps to delineate the space, and it's furthered by an addition of landscaping and a canopy. The building also overhangs above and is further accentuated by the white fluted panels. Also each building entry for the main, as you'll see on the bottom left, is further articulated again by glazing to help with the wayfinding, so it differentiates between the residential and the residential entry. Between the 2 buildings, we're proposing to a strata road. This road is primarily pedestrian oriented. However, it does provide the main access to vehicles into the site. So this is a view towards the chief, showing the color scheme of the northern building, and then the corner residential edge, which is afforded privacy through its canopy, color, and the use of landscaping and solid planted edges. The image to your right is a view from the foreshore looking west towards Sporkus Landing. And you can see here there's a lot more planting towards the end of that, which helps to make it feel a lot more pedestrian oriented rather than vehicular oriented. And it really does step the building down significantly towards the river, the Mamcombe Blind Channel. The accessibility is allowed around all edges of the building. This is a diagram which shows the actual vehicular access, which is accessed off that central strata road, and then into the individual parkades. There is one entire floor of parking below, so a subgrade parking, and then one level at level 1 that's hidden behind the residential and commercial edges. The bike parking is also arranged around the cores and all of the different access points to create multiple options, as well as bike amenities, which include workshops and areas to store your bikes. The parking that's accessed off the strata road is also delineated by its own rhythm and color and rationale, bringing texture in and signage to allow the edges into the parking. The parking gate is also recessed to be somewhat hidden from the main entry, but also providing access into those areas and security. This area is also a main access point, so this is our main service area. So to remove all of the mechanical and loading from the main road, we're using this strata road as an area to access the waste storage. Both waste storage rooms on the buildings are adjacent to one another, as well as the parking areas. We envision that the loading area would be just off to the edge here to not impede on the access into the parkades. Also the mechanical ventilation for the parkades will be hidden within these fin walls that we've been proposing. From the strata road, you then can access by foot or by bike the main waterfront walkway, which will be built at a future date. The villas all face onto this, and they are 2 stories, and each villa has either a basement or what's a bungalow version, or there is a penthouse version. And the penthouse ones are the ones on the top. Each villa is accessed from inside the parkade, from the foreshore, and also from the main podium level, which is at level 2. As we move down the foreshore, you can see that the buildings are articulated in a way that allows the rhythmic forms of the rooftops of the villas to also be reflected behind in the main building form that's 6 stories. And it creates, while somewhat minimal and in more of a massing arrangement, it creates a sculptural form which helps to react to the mountains and create a rhythm back to the main space. The centralized amenity, which this page is referring to, is located on the southeast of the main development. It's also adjacent to the village crescent, which is in the village portion, and faces a future commercial plaza space, which will be more of a public area. The amenity building is envisioned to be used by the main inhabitants of the space, as well as affording different uses for the public. It'll include bike rooms, gyms, etc., and also be accessed from level 1 and also the podium. Between this amenity space and the commercial building, we're also proposing different access ways up to the courtyard. So this is just a view of one between the amenity and the commercial here. On the south building, it's somewhat different to the north. So these accesses are north to south. And then in terms of the north building, because the massing is somewhat larger than the south and has that extra wing on the south building, we've opted to widen that access between the 2 villas and provided direct access from the foreshore up into those courtyards. This is the level 2 plan of the south building. So we've just walked up here between the commercial and the amenity. On the left are 7 townhome units, which are accessed directly from the podium. And the access can be provided in to the main building from the podium into the main core, and then brought up into the different building, into the main portion of the building. Access is also provided to the backs of the villas here at a lower level, and there is also a centralized courtyard that directly accesses the amenity. So as you step up, there will be a lower portion of the podium which is accessible up to the main portion, which is and by accessible, sorry, I mean accessible by foot, but the main portion of this podium here is accessible.
If I could just add something, actually, both levels are accessible by elevator through the amenity building as well. So
Thanks, Patty.
Yep.
The north building not having the amenity on that south corner just is replaced by villas, and that then allows that walkway to come up from the foreshore up the middle of the podium, also accessing the main building. To speak further to the accessibility here, we are providing a primary lobby for each building as well as a secondary lobby to acknowledge the fact that these buildings are somewhat large on the north side, and it reduces the amount of demand on those elevators. It also provides access up from multiple edges of the building. So each primary access is from Sporkus Landing, and then there'll be an additional from the south side. The accessible path of travel will be provided, as Maddie just mentioned there, on the south building from the amenity building out onto both courtyard options, and then also from the main buildings out onto those spaces. We've also taken the opportunity to arrange the adaptable units that will be provided on this project. We've got 55 units that are proposed, and they are all located around the primary core of the building, which is on the northwest side of each building block. These are the elevations of the project, so it helps to identify or illustrate how those roof forms are working together and trying to create a minimal sculpted form while also peeking up at the edges to respond to the different massing on the corners and really emphasize that corner. Each building will have a different color scheme. One will have a green color scheme, which is the south, and then the north building will also have a red color scheme. The articulation on the building is informed through the use of the decks. So each deck also responds to the same color scheme, but also by using a shingle material. So it's all through texture. The folded metal profile is applied across the project on the main portions of the building, as well as the amenity building. And as we step down in the mass, we start to change to those wood textures. So we're looking at a thermally modified wood texture, sorry, wood product on the villas and the townhomes, and then a fiber cement board and shingle in the other areas. The canopy that runs around the entire perimeter is proposed to be a powder coated steel, and the structure is intended to be hidden from the top side of the building. Each deck for the upper levels of the building will also have an enclosable glazed portion, which is integrated with the guardrail, and then that will allow you to be able to enclose that space on the winter months, so it helps people to use them all year round. On the south side of the building there, you can also see how the building above is, the roof line is coming down and then stepping down on these main upper residential portions. And then it's moving into the wooden townhomes, and then across back to the amenity building, which peaks back up to respond to the river. The lower elevation is a view from the actual north of the northern building. So you'll see the color scheme there change to the red. And that's the face that will be against the adjacent adjacent development. Here's a view from Sporkus Landing looking northeast, and then also down Village Way. So we have a view of where the commercial units will have public space and an activated edge along this building, and transitions down into the thicker and less glazed areas, which helps to signify the fact that it's residential. And then again through the roof lines peaking up and articulating the building's form through two distinct edges. And we'll finish here on a view from the southeast, which is looking at that amenity and the townhomes and the villas beyond.
All right, I'll just jump in to cover the landscape. It's full screen.
Sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up. Is it this one?
That one. Jeez. It's not. Yeah, there we are. Beautiful. So just in the interest of time, I will focus on a couple of key aspects of the landscape design for the project, as articulated by the landscape rationale you can see here. Is it not sharing?
Oh, you got to press chat.
Oh, shoot. That is sharing.
There
we are. Okay. Perfect. I'll use the arrows. That'll be easier. So the landscape rationale here, a couple key principles: connecting to the neighborhood. So ease of connection through the blocks. So each street interface, greenway, the waterfront path, and the private street between, and then some resident connections as well that Luke has spoken to. Another key aspect here is complementing the larger public park and playground at Squamish other parks. So these are really imagined as a secret garden, a series of secret gardens and more intimate spaces that complement that sort of a backyard and back forest type of thing, which also have the ability to offer unique microclimates that we position the programming to address. So wind-free zones, a bit of wind-free sun access, and positioning lawns with the sun and community gardens where sun is, and allowing people to have a comfortable space, as well as prioritizing views outwards to the chief and having lounge spaces that face out towards that, and allowing the circulation to have a clear view of where you're going. Also, the indoor-outdoor relationships are thought of. Complementary programming is offered adjacent to building spaces, so amenities spill out, outdoor living, commercial patio and retail spaces, etc. And then speaking to the play, we have a destination playground already, just a stone's throw away. So this is really seen as more of an informal, sort of integrated approach into the courtyards themselves. So scroll. Okay. Clearly my first time to the computer. Some images to speak to the character of these spaces. For the waterfront, one key principle and is that you feel like you're part of it, you're not perched above it. So just to expand on this, we have a joint review area. This is subject to a DPA1 environmental review. So caveat there, but we are also, this is a critical interface of our project. So we're imagining that the buffer planting, there's a significant character of a native planting that allows you to feel immersed within it rather than above it, and duals as a buffer for the patio spaces and yards that they don't feel on display for the public pathway. I think Luke's spoken to most of the other elements here, and in the interest of time, I think we'll just jump to the courtyards, which have a slight variation in form, but the same principles applied, that these are clearings in a forest that allow for mitigating the fishbowl effect of units looking down into the spaces and allowing residents to feel more comfortable. And then you have a more focused dining area inwards looking, and then you have a sloped lawn that prioritizes the views out, and then opportunities to celebrate some wind-free open views with lounging deck spaces. And I will end with that for now. I'm happy to answer any questions and look at anything else in further detail.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that great presentation. So as is our typical format, we will offer an opportunity for each of the design panel members to ask clarifying questions, and then we'll follow that with a second opportunity to provide comments. So we'll start off with questions, and I'll go to the members joining online because that's where they all are today. And we'll start with Kim. Do you have questions for the presenters? I think you're on mute still there, Kim.
There I am. I think most of my questions were answered with the presentation. The fact that there's a playground nearby, I'm not sure where, but that's why you have no playground. And a question I did have is, do you have enough bike parking? I was seeing little 27 space corner storage places, I think, for parking. Is that correct? So that's one question I have. And another is, are your green and red port and starboard, are they aligned right? That's kind of a joke.
It's okay. As a kiteboarder, I appreciate it. Yeah, we are providing enough bike parking. It's actually all in bike rooms. So as is customary in Squamish, we can provide one in each unit and then the rest in bike rooms. But in this one, we actually got 100% distributed across a variety of different bike rooms. We have some in the amenity room. Others are located at level 1 adjacent to the cars. And some in P1 down low. And then all the remainder are actually next to each elevator. So you can actually bring your bike up if you have that fancy mountain bike to be able to bring it in and put it in there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Sarah, do you have questions for the presenters?
Sorry, my apologies. Yes, so I wanted to ask a bit about the parking. So let me just get there. It seems that there's 12 accessible spots for 55 adaptable units, which might be a little bit low. There's the parking
Sarah, you're a bit choppy. It's a bit hard to hear you. Maybe, do you think you could try turning your screen off and see if that makes it better?
Sure. Does that improve the sound quality at all?
It seems to have. Let's go with it and see where we get to.
All right. Okay, so in the North Parkade, I'm there. I'm just wondering, like, if there's a couple of opportunities to actually add some additional accessible parking stalls without losing any of your regular parking stalls. So, for instance, between parking space 108 and 109, could you not just flip the access aisle to go between the two and have two accessible spots if these are regular sized spaces of 2.6 meters? Might be something to think about. And then also on the P1 of the North Parkade, there's two of the parking spaces, number 35 and 36. And I'm just wondering if you can explain what the path of travel is supposed to be in order to get to the back to the lobby.
Yes, just give me 1 second, please, Sarah. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to pull up the drawing in question here because I admit I don't know the numbers off by heart.
Yeah, it's A101 is the page.
What's that? Sorry about this. 1 second. A101. Oh, there we go. Gotcha. Sorry. So which path of travel from the ones on the south
From
side?
in the
Oh,
North
I know.
Parkade, P1, 35 and 36. They're both at the end of a block of parking. But
You know
it
what,
seems that there's almost a path of travel in front of the parking spaces, but then the support post wouldn't allow it to go along beside that parking space. So then you would have to, if all of the parking spots are full, go
Mm.
around the whole bank of parking. And I'm wondering if that is the intent or if it's just.
Well, that's actually a really good point, and I'll admit that we actually just recently caught that. And
Okay.
I'm just sharing my screen right now to show you the latest version that I very quickly presented today, and I should have illuminated you on that one. But we've relocated them so there are two adjacent to the elevator on the south side, another two there as well, and then one to the north side. So there are actually 5 accessible stalls here that all have a very valid path of travel because that was, yeah, not acceptable on the previous version.
Okay, great. And then can you tell me, just out of curiosity, because you can go through the bike storage, through the amenity room and to the lobby if you didn't want to travel behind the vehicles, are those doors going to have automatic door openers on them? Or would you, like if you needed to get to the lobby to go and check your mailbox, for instance, rather than taking the other elevator, is that an option to travel through that way, or would you be traveling through the parking lot?
I feel like it would be safer to go through the parking lot, given that it's a short travel distance, and I believe that was the intent. The bike room, we could definitely look at putting door operators on there. I do wonder whether or not the people that use the building will actually maintain that bike room as a path of travel.
Right.
And that would my thoughts. Well, if that was a concern, we could definitely look at relocating more of the accessible spots to the north side than the south. This is just the most efficient structurally.
Sure. Okay. Next. Oh yeah, and then similar, you can't speak. In the South Parkade, again on the, I think that it's on the second or the P1 level. Let's just see. North, south. Yeah, so page A108. again, I'm just wondering if there's a motorcycle parking spot that's adjacent to an access aisle that's by the main elevator in the left portion of the parkade, whether or not that access aisle could be switched over and then that motorcycle parking relocated over by the other accessible parking stall, which is hang on. Between like parking spot 34 and 35, because you could then push the access aisle adjacent to the vestibule building and use that as your access into the vestibule and the other additional room, just to squeeze in one more accessible spot if needed. And then I'm also trying to understand, just in the on the bench levels, these interior garden spaces, one of them refers to having a sunken kitchen area with outdoor kitchen and feature paving. And it looks that that's the same on both locations. Is that true that those seating areas and kitchen areas are both sunken?
Yes, that is true.
Okay. So there's no access for anybody who has a mobility disability into those areas.
As drawn, yes, but that has been discussed, and yes, certainly.
Okay. That's a bit unfortunate to not be able
Yes.
to go and have a barbecue with your friends. And then
That could be
finally,
accommodated.
will the bike room accommodate an adaptive mountain bike in the lockers? So the width is basically, it's about 0.75 of a meter by 1.94 of a meter. So that's just something
Hmm.
to
We have an overage of bikes, so we definitely can look at accommodating that in
Yeah.
one of the bike rooms that's closest to like an accessible path of travel.
Okay, cool.
There's
And
also some of the stalls are the cargo bike stalls, which are the oversized units.
oh, right.
And we've provided those ones as well, so that could most likely accommodate an accessible bike as well.
Cool. And finally, there's two sort of pull out along the Squamish landing drive. Are those drop off zones, or are they parking zones that are going to be in front of the building?
Are you referring to the main Sparkus Road streetscape?
Yes.
I believe those are just on-street parking spaces.
Okay. They're not designated drop off zones?
No.
No. Okay. And there isn't a clear sort of depiction of the entrances, other than like bird's eye view down of what the main entrances are off of that main road. Is there any, you had spoken about sort of a distinction between the private and public spaces in the textures of the building. Is there any other distinction for those main entrances into the lobby at those locations?
There is simply signage
Okay.
for the building and the main addressing, as well as landscaping cues. But we could review some key info for the visually impaired. So we could do some sort of signage in the, not signage, sorry, cues in the concrete, and things like that.
Yeah, that might be good. Okay, super. I will leave the rest for comments rather than combining them all. Thanks, you guys. And thank you for a complete package. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sarah. Next, Michael, do you have any questions for the presenters?
Can you hear me?
Hi, Michael. Yeah.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, thank you for the presentation and the pretty complete package. I did have some questions. The conifer trees used, those are adhering to the wildfire hazard regulations for level 2?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they're 5 meters from building edges and 6 meters spaced.
Yes. Yeah. We've reviewed the planting for that.
And the
They're smaller. We've switched them out to more columnar Serbian spruce so they don't overlap as much.
okay, so the amabilis fir and the mountain hemlock are no longer included in the design, or
Oh no, those as well. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. The
okay,
trail,
okay.
but also narrower, generally a bit.
And then the soil volume target for the trees, what have you used sort of as a minimum volume?
Yeah. Well, we've lucked out coordinating a significant slab drop, so we're targeting a meter depth for around the trees, and there's plenty. We'll hit our soil volumes, no problem.
Okay, so but do you know like the average what a volume per tree that you're providing? I saw the depths are adequate.
Oh
but-
yeah, no. Do not believe we've calculated that for the courtyard spaces.
Okay.
But we can. Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm just wondering, with this, you did a sun shade analysis of the site. How much sun is that courtyard getting typically, like at its maximum sun availability? What's that look like?
I'm assuming you're talking about the north one, which receives the least.
Yeah, I guess in the orientation, sort of like they're both fairly high on the west side, so kind of like that late afternoon sun could be limited. Yeah, just curious how much that was considered into the placement of the outdoor dining room areas and sort of the programming of those.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly why the lawns were positioned further east, was so that if you're lying out in a more passive, situation on the lawn, that you'll have the most opportunity for sunlight. That's why they're also pushed a bit further north, because they can get away from the south building screening them. And the idea is that the dining area, there's cooking, there's an opportunity once someone wanted to bring a fire pit, that'll be a bit more shaded of a situation, but it's designed as a more enclosed space anyways.
Okay. And then was there any consideration given to sort of rainwater management and how that's directed to softscape or stored, or?
Not to date. We haven't really. I can speak to that.
I can, either I can speak to it or Carlos can speak to it.
You got it.
Like the main portion of the water that's drained from the podium, like we've got to collect it per the District of Squamish standards anyway, before we release it into the system. And then there is actually a main development strategy for the whole of the oceanfront, where this is a retention pond.
Okay.
That it drains to.
Okay, I'm good for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Elle, do you have any questions?
I think most of mine have been already answered by everybody else or by the presentation. Thanks for the presentation, by the way. I totally appreciate the sensitivity to some of the design details. It's really nice to see. One question I do have is just around wind. I heard someone say wind free, and I'm sure that's on everybody's mind when you're thinking through these designs. Having lived on the Blind Channel, I know personally what it's like when you step out of your balcony. So I'm a little curious just about the less so the enclosed or protected balconies that are for the residents, but for at the pedestrian level and the commercial spaces, just what kind of considerations have you been able to give people a little protection when they're coming and going from their spaces from the wind?
It's a really good question. It's somewhat difficult in Squamish, especially given that the wind is prevailing southernly in the summer and northerly in the winter, so we get it from all directions. We were hoping that the aspect of this project will also afford the commercial a little bit of protection once the future developments go ahead to the south. It is facing the prevailing wind direction. To help with some of that side wind, which is one of the reasons why we have pushed back the commercial behind these more monolithic elements that also create the commercial rhythm. The hope was to try and break up that side wind a little bit to be able to keep things sheltered from those from the doors, and then also bringing that canopy out so far, which is also another reason why we're trying to ask for that 1 meter variance on this one side.
Thanks.
Thanks, Al. And last, we have Andrew. Questions for the presenters?
Thank you guys very much for the presentation. A couple of questions that I have. First one's actually directed at staff. How much of the DPA guidelines that were noted to be 15 years old should be sort of included in how we consider this application, and namely the sort of the 1 to 2 story form and the green roof comments? There's a few comments within the report that guidelines were not met, but it seems to me that the general character of the neighborhood's changed considerably since then.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, as you noted, the guidelines, excuse me, I believe were adopted in 2010, so they are older. And I think it's, with all development permits, it's unrealistic that any development would meet all of the guidelines. The consideration generally is, does it meet the intent of the oceanfront and the areas of the policy within the plan? So it wouldn't be realistic to assume that they would meet all of the guidelines, but of course we're always looking for general conformance with the intent of the development permit area, as well as with as many guidelines as feasible.
Okay. Question for the proponent then. How much of the roof material, or what's the distribution of roof materials?
As in what materials are located in which spots?
Yeah, you've noted a black shingle and a white torch on or otherwise.
Yeah, we're proposing primarily the lower Bedo areas for the main portions of the building. So on top of that 5-story and 6-story volume, which would be where we're primarily using the torch on areas. Those are also areas that will be locating a depression for the mechanical, and the parapet will sort of continue to keep that roof line. And so we'll be using that as an opportunity to hide the mechanical, which is why we're proposing that material there. There is an opportunity on that amenity building there to be able to do a metal roof. I think we're proposing shingle on the villas, given that they're trying to go for more of a residential character. We just have to make sure that we meet any fire rating requirements.
So the 6-story buildings will generally meet that heat guideline.
Yeah, that's the intent by using the light colored material, so like a low albedo material to reflect the light and reduce the overheating. But in the areas where the lower buildings are, they were going to be kind of visible from the building above. So those are areas we want to try and maintain the character.
Okay, thank you for that. How the materiality here for the cladding, how would that inform sort of the wider oceanfront as it's sort of setting the stage for the form and character of the neighborhood? Is there any sort of future plans to carry that through the neighborhood?
I can't speak to whether or not there are plans to carry this particular aesthetic through the neighborhood, but I can speak to this project in specifics. The residential one across the way has like a white, a natural wood and dark color palette, whereas the works has the last time it was approved had a zinc shingle applied to the whole thing. So effectively the DPA guidelines in this area more speak to the industrial heritage, while also like a somewhat of a maritime aesthetic, and also the new Squamish vernacular, which we all talk about. The intent of the use behind these is to use the wood in areas where it's softened. And then also there are areas in this building where we can't use combustible wood. However, we've been quite fortunate in the way that we've managed to articulate the form of this building. we can actually use combustible materials in certain areas through the use of firewalls, which is why we're applying them to the townhomes and the villas. The remainder is meant to be more of a industrial shout out, and if I may, while also shouting back to the sale of the boats that we were talking about earlier, which is why we're looking at this fluted panel. It's also a lot more resistant to weathering across the course of its lifespan, and so that's why we've chosen to apply it to the majority of the project.
Thanks, Luke. The last question I have for you is around loading. Do I understand that correctly, that there's just the one loading stall on the strata lane? And then further to that question, how have you contemplated loading for the CRU uses on the southern building?
It's a good question. The loading space in the strata, yeah, there is just one proposed right now. However, it is a pedestrian-oriented streetscape where we're looking at doing flush curbs. So as we start to detail things out, there might be more opportunity for areas there to have more service. To answer the commercial aspect, we have a 18-foot floor to floor, and so there is actually enough height in that south parkade to allow a sprinter van in there. So there can be light deliveries that are allowed into the parkade. However, it's primarily intended for resident use. The actual village way streetscape has a couple of spaces that are off that roadway there, and that also has kind of a rollover flush curb design in place for that area. So there is opportunity to be able to load from the street.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking last mile delivery and servicing the CRUs. So thank you for that. That's all my questions.
Thanks, Andrew. Before we move to comments, are there any last questions that didn't get asked? Okay, sounds great. So perhaps we'll just go through comments in the same order, starting again with Kim.
Okay, thank you. And I would restate that it's a very good comprehensive presentation, so thank you. And generally quite handsome buildings. I like the way you've sculpted the bigger masses and the smaller. I appreciate that you're actually using some wood instead of fake wood. But the main comment I have architecturally is on your treatments, your skin treatments. The buildings are big, and I find that using that wide fluted metal, I mean, I've got nothing against metal siding, but the wide fluted to me makes the buildings look bigger, not smaller. You could consider maybe a more random pattern or something that just breaks it up, because in looking at your elevations, particularly your west elevation, it becomes fairly monotonous. And I would say the same thing for your streetscape. It doesn't all have to be green in the same material, and it doesn't all have to be red in the same material. I think you could break up that streetscape and be less simplistic about it, and it would give it more interest. And that's cladding. I think the form is great, but I think that your cladding could be relooked at. But you know, it might be a matter of taste, but I do think it makes the building seem larger in the way using such monolithic materials. So and that really is my main comment. Most of the other questions I had, you had answered and thought about quite thoroughly. So I think it's generally a very good project. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim, for those comments. I've noted them down. Sarah, did you have some comments?
I did. Yes, overall, I think that this is a great looking project, really unique and thoughtful to the space and the views and the completeness of the package. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I would just like to encourage you to have a little bit more accessible parking. If you can please add some distinction to the paving at the main entrance, or, you know, as Kim had said, maybe there's an opportunity for a slightly different color or treatment around the main entrances into the lobby off of the Squamish Landing Road. That would be great. I would try and create a low-level ramp into those outdoor kitchens. And short of that, maybe some sort of temporary ramping system to allow somebody to participate in an outdoor meal, I think is an essential part of inclusion. And then as these are going to be market units, I think that it's important to allow individuals to choose in those adaptable units if they want to have a wheel-in shower right away versus a bathtub, so that they have less renovations to do in the future if they want to age in place in those units. And just being cognizant that you need to have the shower controls reachable from a seated position. Otherwise, I think the project looks great, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Michael, did you have some comments?
I do. Yeah, I think it's a very strong design. I like the sort of attention to detail and the different sort of pockets that are created and different environments for people to be in, and the vegetation that's used. I think my things to consider, just confirming that the minimum soil volumes are being provided. There are lots of trees provided in there, so just making sure that it looks like we have the depth, but make sure that there's enough volume. I'm a bit concerned about the conifers providing too much winter shade. I like to see, like, conifers aren't often shown in these, and I really like them in the landscape, but I think given how much shade this area gets, just maybe consider what that feels like in the winter, because I'm not sure we want to be providing more shade to that area in the winter. I would look at the amabilis fir and mountain hemlock species selections. I haven't seen them, like, they're fairly large species with shallow roots, and they're typically at a little bit higher elevation. And hemlocks particularly can be prone to blowing over. So just maybe look at if those are the correct species for where you're providing them. Similarly, I haven't seen Pinus contorta used in a boulevard condition before, but I think the Picea omarica, which you have on here, is a great choice, and maybe that would be one to consider in the boulevard space. The one I'm feeling a bit conflicted about the main drive entrance to the parking. I feel like there's gonna be a significant use of cars through that. It feels a bit narrow to me, and it's kind of giving mixed messages if it's car oriented or pedestrian oriented. And I'm thinking, if I'm in that space, I think I would actually feel safer with curbs on the sidewalks, given the narrow lane, both as a pedestrian feeling protected from cars, but also if you are with young kids on run bikes or strollers, just like having that protection. And I don't think that curbs need to be considered as a barrier to accessibility if there's curb letdowns. I think sometimes, white cane users and guide dogs are trained on the curbs. So I'm just thinking about how the pedestrian feels in there, and sort of the breaking up of the sidewalk. It's like there's this paving of the sidewalk, and then it stops, and there's a gap, and then it connects again. And similarly, kind of looking at design ways that you can sort of increase the visibility of the driveway onto Spaucus Landing, both as pathway and multi-use pathway users and as the driver, so that both are aware that this intersection's happening. And then, yeah, I guess the driveway entrance looks tight for turning, so maybe just confirm that the turning radius works for the types of vehicles you're using there, because it feels a bit constrained. But those are my comments. Thanks for the presentation.
Thanks, Michael. Elle, over to you next for comments.
Just have one. It's a little bit echoing what Kim was saying. I think that pedestrian level color. I love that you're using color. First of all, I love that it references parts of Squamish, probably the part of Squamish that we all really love, because it's got a lot of variety in that space. But the variety that works in that space is a lot around the textures and the different types of signage and kind of the way people have grown into it. And so building a new space with all one color, I think, if not done so well, can risk becoming monotonous quickly. So just finding ways that you can still, I think, do what you're trying to do with it, which is quite lovely, but also allows for a little more variety on that pedestrian level, even if it is texture, planter boxes, like just so a little bit more differences than how it reads currently, at least on the drawings. But I echo everybody else too, like really lovely building and great presentation.
Thanks, Al. And Andrew, you have the last word here. Comments for the panel.
All right. Well, overall, I think it's a very strong project. I think it's going to make for a really beautiful downtown oceanfront building. I really like what you've done with the roof line, and I do think that it's a sculpture and frames and reflects a lot of the mountain space in those locations. I've been referring a lot to some of the DPA guidelines. And I think that a lot of the areas where the objectives weren't met or noted not to be met are either somewhat outdated or no longer suited. So I do think that around the roofing guidelines, I actually think that you've chosen to do your best to meet those guidelines where applicable. And I don't know that green roofs are being done much at all. So I think that the white roof on the 6 stories and choosing to use the shingles as you have makes a lot of sense. I think that the 1 to 2 story guidelines no longer fit that space, and I think that the massing and height of the buildings is suitable for the location. The areas of critique that I would have for you is just around the loading. Overall, I think for 300 plus units with sort of one loading zone, and that loading zone where you have to you'll have to pull out the bins and cross the only street or entrance for all of the buildings may become quite busy and challenging. So maybe some more consideration around how you approach the loading for waste of the buildings. And further, I think that some consideration could be given to last mile deliveries, some dedicated spaces so that the CRUs can be serviced practically. Those are all my comments. Thank you.
Oh, super. Thank you. So maybe I can quickly summarize the comments. I feel like with this project, there weren't that many. Most of the comments were really just noted on what a sensitive and thoughtful design and excitement to see something happen out there. So going through the categories that we were asked to comment on and starting with site planning, there were comments around ensuring that accessibility, that the common outdoor areas, including seating areas, and the other gathering areas are accessible. And so a request to look at that design and seek to improve it. Also ensuring that auto door openers are added in the appropriate locations to ensure that travel is eased in and out of the building and into the various parts of the building. Ensuring that there's accommodation for oversized bikes, particularly thinking about some of the size of adaptable mountain bikes. And a request that there is choice for purchasers for accessible features in the units, especially thinking about the showers, roll-in showers. There was also some comments about the width of the parking entrance and the legibility, thinking there about interactions between vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists, a suggestion to look at paving treatments and curb, and a suggestion that loading needs to be thought through and perhaps additional loading zones should be included. Thinking about the architectural design and building materials, there was a suggestion that with the size of the buildings, perhaps some different cladding could be considered to break up the size of the buildings and add some interest. So looking at changing those wider flutes to maybe a more random or less monotonous form. Also looking at adding variety with texture and color and maybe other elements such as additional planters. And then in terms of landscaping, there was a request to ensure, I guess a note that the soil depth is excellent and just a request to ensure that adequate soil volume will be there for the trees, and some concern about the amount of shade during the winter that might be provided by the spec'd conifers, and consideration maybe to look at alternate species. So that was the comments that I collected. Did I miss any? Okay, great.
I think there was just to elaborate on the texture and materials, because that came from two of us, just to look at the commercial level as well, the street grade, and add some texture or variety to give it more a bit more breakup, so that you're not all in the same shopping mall. Okay.
Great, thanks
You
for
don't
that.
have to use shopping mall, but yeah, it has a bit of that feel right now. So.
Thanks for that clarification and distinction, Kim. I think that will be captured in the minutes.
There was also just a comment about considering how pedestrians might feel protected or unprotected in the driveway entrance and the visibility.
Okay, yeah, we'll make sure. I think the presenters heard that as well. Thank you, Michael. Okay, so at that point, I think we'll take it to consideration of our recommendations. As always, with this type of project, we have 4 possible recommendations. Is there someone that would move one of the recommendations at this point? Sarah? Sarah would move that the design panel supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the recommendations. Do you have a seconder for that motion? Kim will second. Maybe just by a show of hands, we could see support for Sarah's motion. It appears to be unanimous. So with that, I'll say thank you so much to the presenters. Really wonderful presentation, great project, and we're excited to see ground break soon, right?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate all of your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very insightful. Thank you, Fletcher.
So we'll take a 5-minute recess to allow the presenters to leave and the next set of presenters to get set up. So we'll get going again at like 16 minutes after 3, if that works for people. Thank you. Andrew and Kim are able to rejoin. And there's Kim. Looks like we're just waiting for Andrew. And the presenters are setting up and ready to go. There's a really great board with all of the materials here that none of you are able to like touch and feel, but I can tell you that it's really nice to have it. It's always great to be able to see the colors and materials in real life. So thanks for bringing that over.
Yeah, just want to fill screen that.
He's trying to fill this one. It's the architectural one.
Toggle
Go.
and toggle just each page. Sure, this is more fun. Yeah, you can see arrow. Arrow. Okay.
I can't see who's online, but do we have confirmation that we have quorum again? Looks like we're good. We've got the same crew as before. Wonderful. So we have our second project to review here. We've got Brent Murdoch to present 38140 3rd Ave. Maybe I'll give the project planner, Kerry Hamilton, a chance to introduce the project, and then we'll have Brent present it to us.
I'll be brief for the panel today. I know we're running over time here. So my name is Kerry Hamilton, a planner at the District of Squamish. And this project here before ADP is DP 000641 for a 6-story mixed-use building with ground floor commercial and 45 residential units and 45 parking stalls. We've also noted that there's a few minor variances for parking in the report. Staff have been working with this applicant through the rezoning process as well as through this DP process. And I provided some images just to show that the steps and the changes that have been thoughtfully made to the building prior to presentation to ADP here. And so staff have really just highlighted a few of the key elements that have changed and wanted to get any further direction or considerations from ADP panel, particularly just around that ground floor commercial and our guidelines, as well as the south elevation. As you can see, there's been a number of changes made to that to try and mask that firewall density that eventually would get covered up in a future building beside it. We also had some comments around just wanted to get the panel's consideration of the materials that are being proposed, which is why there's a wonderful material palette here for you today. So if you have any further questions around that, we can show you some images through the screen if we can. And then a few just minor ones where staff have just been curious to know some conversations around the landscaping and the roof design, as well as the roof mechanical the coverage of the roof mechanical portion of the building, as well as the proposed public art pieces. So I think that covers most of our staff's focus for today.
Thanks, Kerry. I'll turn it over to the architect to present.
And landscape architect.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, panel. Brent Murdoch, Murdoch and Company. I am the principal architect, and also the principal landscape architect for the project. So thanks very much. Look forward to getting everyone's thoughts and comments. I'll try and be brief. It's as Kerry mentioned, we're just a little tight for time. The project is located downtown, and I think one of the critical aspects is although not what I would consider to be a typical infill project, is certainly infill in a transitional area in town. And I think it's really quite, starting to move when you start to look at the existing site was formerly occupied by a derelict home. The home has been removed, and site is remained in its kind of state right now. As of today, it's a bit of a swimming pool. The site topography is lower than Pemberton Avenue, and there's a lane to the effectively to the east side of the property, which is actually several feet lower than the sidewalk. You see where the two cars are on the right-hand side there. As you can see, even just by the sort of figure ground drawing in the lower left, downtown and kind of more substantial footprints of buildings. And then as you move up towards Eagle Wind, some more substantial work being done presently with the Three Summits project, which is kitty corner to this site. And then to the southwest is, fundamentally a single family residential neighborhood that, referred to. Some of the zoning allows for some transition, more substantial density. And I think this is kind of that toe in the door in some regards for the remainder of that. And so, how this building, mixed use commercial on the ground floor with residential on the upper floors is kind of a very tight site, has some odd site configurations and access, parking, many of the same issues you've seen probably over the last several years with regard to some of these similar projects. So, that's kind of the challenge that was put in place for us, and closely working with staff trying to resolve many of those. I think I'm going to jump to imagery here to a certain extent too, because as much as there's some fundamental practicalities of dealing with how many units on the site, loading, access, accessibility, the configuration of our building, and I'll talk to that in a moment, is as an architect and a designer, we do need to look at where we are and how this building represents where we live in the world, and obviously Squamish is one of those unbelievable places that has the most amazing surrounding landscape, and we're tuned into that. And I like to think that, the building, where we've gotten to at this stage is kind of a really good representation. And some of the imagery here, some local, some, sort of gleamed from better projects than our own, and that kind of help to establish a little bit of the, the fit and character. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Architectural site plan, really just looking at some of the, the fundamentals of the site. To the bottom of the page, which is actually the east side, is the lane. And at the far end, you can see where the lane kind of interfaces with the sidewalk along Pemberton Avenue. All of which is going through a number of changes with through engineering, and still a bit of a fluid situation. The landscaping and boulevard treatments are somewhat defined by more practicalities of engineering and civil works, etc. And establishing a number of sort of interfaces for commercial CRUs. To 3rd Avenue on the top of the page, and Pemberton Avenue on the south. Center core, bike parking, access, access to the not underground parking, but I'll call it second floor parking, which is in the bottom left-hand corner. Lane parking, which is just off the existing lane there, with some of the proposed loading to occur on street, and that's subject to some engineering input as well. Just looking at a little bit more of some of the details related to bicycle parking, larger bike parking, cargo bikes, etc., and just some of the practicalities of the site. As I mentioned, some of the challenge with this site and just in downtown Squamish in general, obviously, is just like dealing with parking, how you get parking, working with staff to establish parking on the second floor, and with some other technological kind of advances with related to sort of signalization, as we are using a single access lane wide. And not that it's a completely new precedent, but it is a bit of a challenging situation, but it does allow us to, meet our parking obligations within a reasonable amount. Accessible parking in the lower right-hand corner, access to the main sort of core, vertical core elevator is effectively a flat surface area. So, we're not going up any undue ramps and of that sort. Upper parts of the building, building in, generally on the smaller size with regard to overall unit size, and I won't belittle this too much, but getting into a number of units, the intent being to be that entry level market. Smaller, with a higher percentage of smaller units versus larger units. We have managed to achieve some of those in some of the corner areas where we do have a little bit more space to be able to work with, and access to, light and views, etc. And so that's generally the program over the upper floors. You'll notice that the building is a U-shaped building with the south courtyard space, albeit small, being an opportunity for access to light, and rather than because it is primarily north facing, that was seen as an opportunity for the best light. And as we all know, in our climate, the north facing spaces don't get used as much. Consequently, sort of pushing us and considering, to take advantage of a rooftop deck, which we can look at in a little bit. So effectively the same floor plan as you move up through the building, with some subtle configuration and changes of units to suit, sort of a bit slow here, as we're going up through the building, with that center unit kind of having more of the changes or adaptions to suit the space there. Rooftop deck. This was, this is one of those spaces that, was really an aha moment in many regards. Is, where we're sited in the center of town here is that we really do have amazing views, in all directions. And whether you're looking, south directly down towards, the oceanfront, to the east with the Chief, and to the north with the mountaintop peaks, and then to the west, even the profile of that. And obviously became a very inspiring aspect just in terms of its location. And the beauty of, albeit, a day like today, totally suck. But, we know there are those times of the year when, being up here is a very fantastic opportunity. And I think kind of a really unique opportunity. And, we've seen a number of developments over the last 2 years that have taken advantage of that. And I think it's a really, really it's a found opportunity that I don't think we take advantage of enough. And so, the amenity, the rooftop, having a variety of different spaces, scales, and sizes that allow for obviously some rooftop gardening, which is to be managed and handled by the strata, ramps to allow access to those as well, so that everybody can take advantage of that. Terraces would kind of break down the space a little bit and some furniture configurations we can see in the landscape plan that will allow for a little bit more, more personal gathering and multiple gatherings. And, there's a number of units in this building, so it does allow for some variation, with the perimeter of these decks and hard surfaces being a green roof. So I think probably the perspectives are a little bit better to judge, but the idea of, in our current times, we certainly need to be very conscious of cost, efficiency of the building structure, how we get all that. Obviously, in our minds, the idea that, I don't want to telegraph where the parking is in the building either. And, that second floor, area doesn't read as a parking garage. And that, so that was, something to think about. The idea of, these strong corners and these prow-like conditions, both in plan, but also in elevation, and start to allude to, some of the variation and the subtlety of the mountaintop profiles, the subtle aspect of, a canopy that serves as a weather protection, obviously, but also reiterates and strengthens the idea of that same profile in the landscape. The subtlety of the materials and the colors and textures. So it is not Core 10, just so we don't get that staining quality, but the robust, strong base of the building and the sort of, albeit, I'll call it rusty color, similar to the Squamish rock colors. And if you drive up the highway right now, looking at the colors of the dogwood twigs and the colors on the side of the highway, that is the color that we're trying to capture. And the idea of these colors being, not a particular overly characteristic mountain landscape color, but it does have a softness and a calmness about it that when you look in the landscape, these are the textures. So that, and then the treatment of board and batten, it's varied. It's not like a sort of a standard craftsman board and batten kind of treatment, but one that reflects a changing character as you move up a tree or in the forest. It changes and adapts, and even at a floor by floor level. So you get a loosening up of that sort of rigidity that a board and batten can typically have. Same thing on the west side of the building, treating, albeit in a formal kind of control, the patterning of the and randomness of the horizontal boards having a variety of spacing and sizes. So working with a 3.5, a 5.5, a 7.5, a 9.5 size product that and using that in a random varied pattern allows for a softness and a subtlety that, we don't often see. We sort of see the same thing up and down the whole building. And I think, generally, we understand that, we read that, but architecturally, I think it softens the building, and that wraps around the building. The south elevation, obviously, interim, going to be a challenge. It's not, there's not a lot of these faces around, Squamish, and, really looking at an attempt to take on a more compositional aspect that treats that wall having some variety, and your eye moves around, and opening that up so the courtyard does have some brightness, but also sort of wrapping the building with some of these different materials. And so the south elevation isn't a 4-story or 5-story sort of solid blank wall of 2 materials. It's got something going on, and there's some liveliness to it, and the intentionality of trying to get art pieces that sort of reflect and move and have some different scales. And so, we see it as a very dynamic approach versus a very standardized approach that, when you ideally come back to it, or you drive down the street at a different time, you capture different things. Materials, I think, are fairly kind of explanatory here in terms of the intention. Sadly, not a lot of natural wood products, but there are exceptional non-combustible products these days that have a durability and a robustness, and thankfully an incredibly good textural and material and a tactile quality that we think this building can start to reflect. And as much as we love wood, we love dealing with it all day long, it is just not a durable that, this will look good on day 1, but in day 365, after a weather day like today, will not look good. And we'd like to see this stand up over many years. I think probably the only, sort of quality aspect of looking at some of these sections is just sort of understanding some of the how the access ramp to get up into that second floor, and that there's a bit of structural gymnastics and some topographical aspects to that second floor to make our ramp work to get up there. And with taking advantage of some of the spaces underneath that for some of these storage spaces, bike storage, etc. And so it's really sort of optimizing a lot of those opportunities before we get too low in the building and have to deal with, water table issues, etc. Not going to get into the lighting plan. I think it's, that's really probably a little too finite to get into at this point, but, certainly been looked at. And I think probably around the building, there's a reflection on the elevation of the building, and even on the rooftop deck with low level lighting that really sort of washes the building, washes the surfaces, and keeps a low level so that there's an appreciation of night skies, which is what we still have, those 1 or 2 days a year when we actually get aurora borealis, and be able to take advantage of that and not be this blinding rave scene on the roof. Signage plan again shows up in a little bit more traditional scale and where that you might expect that to appear. I will point out in the drawing on the bottom here to take advantage of some of these sort of spandrel-like aspects to the upper part of the windows, so that even in the areas where there's actually parking in behind, we can look at sort of alluding to a larger commercial floor to ceiling, and kind of gives the commercial area a bit more presence and suggestive of a more showy space there. And then the signage working in conjunction with doors and typical entrances, where we have the entrances of the buildings to the residential building, to the commercial storefronts, a little bit more shape and sculptural quality that kind of alludes to a little bit more refinement and suggestive of something a little bit more special. Similar thing going on. I think I like getting to these drawings because they're a little bit more interesting and kind of capture, I think, the scale and how the building is hopefully portrayed in reality when we get built. But I think there's some, there is a subtle framing of the window treatments with a more substantial metal trim around that. That's for two reasons. A, for just some of our energy and subtle shading, also envelope, and just when we have these buildings that are flat walls to deal with obviously driving rain, which we do have on occasion in Squamish, and some protection there, but alluding to definitely it's a subtle and more sublime treatment of the elevations and the materials. Probably the battens are a little bit more robust in the drawing than what we would expect, but at the same time, I think it helps to illustrate my point of the variation from the lower part of the building to the upper part of the building. And same thing with the texture and the variety, even the flashing lines, the horizontal flashing lines at the floor level, are kind of built into the treatment. And it works with, kind of what our expectations for the, how we get this carried off. A little bit more scale, some of these sort of subtle, the amenity, of the bike lanes and the subtle landscape treatment, the street trees, a little bit of sculptural quality of the entrances and the canopy, and then seating places where we can just adjacent to the commercial building. Arrival at the building and kind of looking at how some of the subtle roofline parapet lines and start to create a little bit more kind of work with the the shape of the footprint of the building. Yep. Go back to this one, and I think this is a, you know, obviously a battle. That one little notch in the corner there is actually our artist rendition carefully has not shown the BC Hydro transformer that sits on a pole right in front there. That part of the building had to be notched out because we can't be any closer to that. So that's just a functional thing we had to deal with. And but it does allow for some changing materials and some variety of textures there that, you know, kind of help to provide a little bit of interest on the hopefully short term. Shadow diagram, you know, really looking at what that looks like, and you know, the imprint of that on the landscape, and not really having you know, a overly dramatic difference in what one might expect in the various times of the year. I'm going to shift to the landscape plan if I can. How do I get to that? Ooh. There we go. Okay. Excellent. Landscape plan, you know, obviously very subtle at on the ground plane is really looking at some you know, materials that are very typical of the downtown area. Oop, you okay with that? Yeah. And then on the upper courtyard spaces, looking at concrete pavers, you know, where we can, some more elaborated planting pockets, which is just off the lane, and with an opportunity for a bit more planting. Generally, the boulevard planting is quite small scale. Oop. Rooftop deck. So I think, you know, some good examples there with to the left-hand side, with looking at, you know, sort of raised planter beds, raised seating areas, and that's really just to create some help to define some of these sort of seating areas, gathering areas, the tray aspect of the green roof, which you know, we found to be quite a very practical approach to dealing with this sort of conditions. You know, steps on those terraces, again, to define some spaces. And just in the subtlety, you'll start to see some overhead fabric structures that provide a little bit of shade and you know, obviously allude to sails and things of that sort, but do provide a little bit of a retreat from, you know, when the sun can get quite painfully hot, unfortunately, and just some change of space there, with mechanical being the core part of, you know, the elevator core, and mechanical rooftop mechanical kind of forming the center part of that building. And I don't think there's much more to add from that. I'll leave it open for questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you for the presentation. So again, we'll go through any questions for the presenter, and then we'll have, following that, an opportunity to present comments. And I did just want to direct your attention to the report that accompanied this project, because it did include some specific questions for us to consider, 6 of them, I think. So just really quickly, related to the ground floor and commercial entrances, a request for comments on the current ground floor design and whether changes could be made to support the DPA 3 and 5 guidelines. A request for comments on the materials as it relates to the DPA 3 guidelines. Question around landscaping related to the seating plan, and what furnishing elements should be considered and secured for the amenity spaces to ensure activation and social gathering. I think that refers to the rooftop deck. Then a question around the roof mechanical, the screening of the roof mechanical systems. Looking at the south elevation, a question whether to consider it in relation to the Development Permit Area 3 guidelines. And then a question about the public art on the, that's the east elevation, I think. Is that right? So specific questions in the report. Okay, so this time maybe we'll go in reverse order. And so we'd start with Andrew. Do you have questions for the presenter?
You're muted, Andrew.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you very much for the presentation. The question I have first is just directed at staff to inform the remainder of my questions. So, Kerry, the question I have for you is what further opportunities post ADP meeting does the project have to review the public art component and approve the public art component of the project?
Great question, Andrew. So in the land development agreement that we're currently finalizing and taking to council in the coming weeks, it includes some direction around the public art pieces. There is a public art piece that is dedicated to the district. And so that piece, there will be some review of the Squamish Art Council on that particular art piece. And then for the art pieces that are proposed as like on the south face of the building as murals, at this time we have no security for how those are reviewed, but there is an interest from the applicant to again work with Squamish Art Council to approve the final art pieces.
Okay, and then are those art pieces on the southern face, are they to satisfy the DPA guidelines, or are they sort of an interim solution just as a offer for the project and from the proponent?
If that's a question to staff, I would say it's a bit of both.
Okay, so that's a follow-up question for you, Kerry, yes.
To answer it, it's intended to mask the temporary or mask to address the massing on that south face, as well as to meet a guideline that we do have in the DPA 3 to provide public art.
Okay, thank you. So I'll direct my other questions towards the proponent around art. So do I understand correctly that there's two contributions proposed here? There's both the murals on the southern face and there is the art contemplated in the architectural renderings?
Yeah, I think the final definition of any of the art pieces is still up for review. I don't think we don't have a particular piece in mind, but I'm happy to, entertain a variety, and I think the proponent themselves may have some.
Yeah, just to clarify for the panel, as one of your attachments in the report, it's, I think, attachment, oh, the numbers are a little wrong, but in attachment 2, renderings and details, there is a section in there that speaks to the public art proposal that the applicants are looking to consider, and this is for the district public art piece. There's also some more narrative in that section around the direction they're looking to take with those murals, if you've had a chance to look at that section.
Thanks, Kara. I have, yeah. So I was just hoping to get a better understanding of the distribution. I believe in the architectural renderings, it doesn't have too many particulars on the siting of the of each art piece. So I was looking to get some clarity around that. So my understanding from that public art narrative is that the kaleidoscope of butterflies work, that's a public art component yet to be cited, which lands or where that would live. I would look to ask a question around. There's the young ferns component, which is an element of bike racking. I presume that would be located on the street frontage. And the third item is the mural component. So could maybe the proponent speak to the siting of all three of those items?
Thank you. Yeah, I think no final definition of those items has been sought ever. Obviously getting the bike racks and kind of those more sort of fundamental and functional aspects, and then the art piece with the butterflies, etc. Although we have samples and of those pieces here, has yet to be defined. So,
okay. Have you selected the artist for the butterfly public art piece?
if I can drag Sydney up here for a second, she's can help with the definition of that.
Hello everyone, Sydney from Coast Development. The artist has not been selected and confirmed as of yet, but we are collaborating with an artist who's conceptualized the kaleidoscope of butterflies and both the young ferns.
Okay, great. And then is there any commitments beyond sort of what's in the architectural renders as to sort of size and scope of the given art pieces?
We have been speaking with the artists on scope, but the final details have yet to be worked out. This piece would be a few years down the road for installation, so it is a little early to start thinking about the full scale of these pieces. But in our community amenity contributions, we have a budget that's been established, and so the artist is aware of the budget, which will inform the scale of the pieces ultimately.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm going to limit my questions to the art component for today. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. So next we'll go to Elle. Any questions for clarification?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I have a couple questions. One on the plan on the ground floor plan for the commercial spaces. In the renderings, the doors look recessed. In the plans, they don't look too recessed. Are they? Are the plans accurate with them just being kind of like maybe about a foot or two in versus the renders just look like they're quite stepped back, which I think makes a big difference for the pedestrian experience, which is why I'm asking.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, the intent is that the shape and definition of the refinement around the doors is alluding to a more setback condition, and I think the final depth of that is to be determined. But that's the intent, that there's a little bit more, but it's not set back multiple feet. If anything, it's maybe a foot.
Okay. And then sorry, when you were talking through the landscaping plan, my volume just cut out a little bit. So you may have touched on this, but I'm wondering about the cladding for the proposed mechanical screen at the top. And maybe just I know one of the questions the staff asked us was around seating up there. So if you could just touch on that again as well. Apologies everyone if I missed that when it cut out.
Yeah, the mechanical, I'll call it the mechanical tower, for lack of a better name, at the top of the building is intended to be a pre-finished metal, similar to what I have here in the
Yeah, I know. I'm
board,
sorry we couldn't be there in person.
but yeah, and a portion of that is slotted or open for ventilation purposes. I think some of the renderings may have picked up on, or elevation drawings may have picked up some tall slots, which would have been allude to that.
Perfect. And then do you mind also just touching on the seating, which is something I think the staff asked us to comment on the roof terrace?
Yeah, the intent was to have some sort of ability, nothing permanent, but the ability to move seating around to suit the gathering scales of groups. So it allows a bit of flexibility. The only thing likely that's set and permanent are the raised planter beds.
Got it. And then my last question is just on materials, and I really am bummed that I couldn't be there in person to see that board. I think it makes a huge difference to actually see them in person. But in the renderings, the kind of contrast between the two blocks, between the horizontal and the vertical, are quite dramatic. And I'm curious, when you see the material in person, I know the board and batten is going to be quite dramatic depending on how thick it is, or how, what the depth is. But I was wondering about the horizontal one, and the kind of how dramatic that is visually. I know, how close can we get that board to the camera?
I can bring it as close as you want for a quick.
Yeah,
It
it
doesn't
doesn't do
help.
it justice. I think what you'll find is that the horizontal, you're getting more standardized profiles, albeit a variety of profile sizes. So the setback and depth of that product is not great. The reveals between that are used and are intended will, realistically only be 1 inch to 1.5 inches deep. So, that's the profile depth you're going to get of that. The board and batten does allow us for a bit more variety, so that, we can play with the idea of the product being on edge and or flat, or, is it a 2x rather than a 1/2 inch product? And to be quite honest, I like the idea of actually of having a variety of that, so that you do get some depth and variety of the battens. So the back panel product is actually is kind of basically I'll call it the more solid product. And then the battens are like a more artful treatment of that, from a floor to floor to floor. So you move from a more dense condition that you might see in the forest, as you move to the upper part of the 5th and 6th floors, where you start to get a little bit of loosening of that, and in a random pattern and spacing. Yep.
Great. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thanks, Elle. Up next, we have Michael. Questions for the presenter.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Got a few questions. What is the depth that's been accounted for with the green roof system?
Green roof system, typically a live roof pattern. So, we're looking at a 4 to 6 inches of depth, typically in their panel product.
Okay, so it's either going to be 4 or 6. I think there's like an 8 inch, a 6 inch, and a 4 inch system.
So I just can't quite.
Oh,
you have to be a little louder.
Is it you haven't confirmed if it's going to be the 8 inch system, the 6 inch system, or the 4 inch system yet?
Not likely to be 8 inch system. It's going to be 4 to 6 inches system. Yeah.
Okay, and is there going to be irrigation provided to it?
Yeah, we'll need to irrigate it. I have the exact same system on my own house, and I find it needs some irrigation and some attention.
Okay, and is there any provision for off-site irrigation for the off-site trees and landscape?
I don't believe so at this time.
Okay.
It is in our street safe guidelines that they are irrigated.
Okay. On the rooftop, is there any current provision for tool storage or anything like that provided?
In the mechanical space at the top, we've oversized that intentionally, so to allow for some additional storage, which would be stratum maintained, not like random people being able to get access to it. Yeah.
Okay. And is there a hose bib provided, on an extra hose bib on the roof?
There will be. Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm curious, with the shade sails, these are going to be like anchored into the roof structure? Have you thought about sort of the wind and durability of the shade sail structure?
Yes, the intention is there's some better fabric products out there that are more desirable, and then the with some anchored vertical posts that they'll all be connected to.
Okay. And then my final question is sort of a bit of a dual question. One, were any other stairway configurations considered down into the laneway? And then also, I'm not quite clear on how the trellis structure is proposed at that corner as well.
Yeah, so I'll answer the second question first. So the trellis is more of a screen. It's an awkward corner. Working with access for the stairs there, we tried a number of conditions that to provide, and this seemed to be the least obtrusive, and then with a planter and then the trellis screen work at that corner is really to hide the cars. And the intention is that that same material and color is the same color we used on the upper part of the commercial treatment.
So is the trellis right against the building face? Is that?
No, it's not.
Okay. Does the trellis then prevent any sight lines from someone coming down the stair looking around the corner?
Correct.
Okay. And then one other question was, were there any other stairway configurations considered, or is that the only way those stairs can go down?
We actually spent a bit of time at that corner and looked at a few different conditions, and that was we don't really see that being a high desire line, and so it is a bit subtle and works with the existing street condition and movement patterns. So
okay,
rather than making it a big statement, let's put it that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Over to Sarah for questions.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. So let's just see here. I understand trying to utilize all the space and the awkward shape of the space. Are there plans for the doors that are going down those 3 ramps to the bike room? Will those have automatic door openers on?
I think, to be quite honest, it's best to have the automatic door openers as an option. They just seem to be the best solution.
So that's a yes. Okay, and then I want some explanation just of the rooftop deck. There's a ramp on one of them, but at each change, is there a step up to each of those different platforms?
There is. There's there's typically a 6-inch rise, so you would enter onto the one north facing concrete paver patio, and then there's a ramp up to the garden area, and then to the 2 horizontal wood colored treatment on towards the prow on the bottom right and on the bottom left are both at the same elevation there. And so there's an opportunity. Not every platform will have access, but we have opportunity to access a variety of the different conditions there. So, for example, the southwest corner, those do not have a ramp access up to them.
Right, and there is no, other than separating these spaces, there isn't a reason to have the elevation change?
No, purely to create a scale breakdown and potential for movement of chairs and tables to create a whatever configuration makes sense for the group gathering.
Okay, is there any heat proposed up there or not?
No.
No. Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And we'll go lastly to Kim with questions for the presenter.
Just staying on the roof, are the guardrails all around the terraces? Is that where they sit? I'm just not clear on the drawing. Yeah,
Correct.
so then, and then the green roof is beyond the guardrails.
Correct.
Okay. And how high up is that terrace with the ramp from the paver terrace that Sarah was just talking about? What's the elevation change in that? Do you know?
Basically, the change of elevation is six inches.
Oh, nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I assume those 4x9s are the planters that are
Correct.
yeah. Okay. The murals, I'm curious about them because it looks like they're applied to the wall. Is that what's happening? That they're something that's hung on the wall, or it's hard to understand?
Well, until they're actually defined, but the goal was to frame those sizes and proportions of available space to work within, and whether it's a hung product or an applied product, it becomes kind of the backdrop for whatever art piece, structure, painting is ultimately chosen.
So that right now it's kind of a placeholder, but because on the one wall, it looks like you can do, it's a flat surface of, I'm not sure what, but you could, in West Vancouver, there's been a lot of, and which is where I am, there's been a lot of mural work recently, but it's painted directly to the walls. So the walls are a texture that could get that on it. And this looks like more like it's, as I said, something that's painted onto a surface and then applied to the wall. Is that right?
Yeah. We see that there would be a product placed on the wall over top of the envelope that allows for the art piece to be carried off as it needs to be.
Okay. Okay. And the courtyard, and I believe this is an obvious question, but the courtyard, all of that sits right on the property line. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So if we get something built on the other side, that south light kind of disappears. Yeah. Okay. Great. That was all my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Before we move to comments, are there any last questions to pose to the presenter? Okay, great. So we will go through comments now, and we'll just go in the same order. So starting with Andrew, your opportunity to provide comments.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think that overall this project is quite a strong project. I think it makes very good use of what is a relatively tricky site. So I'm going to direct most of my comments in the same order as they've been requested from staff. And I appreciate both staff and the proponents' responses to clearing these up. So as far as it relates to the ground floor commercial entrances, I think they've done quite a nice job of meeting the site conditions and creating something visually interesting to meet the streetscape. With respect to the materials, I don't know that it's for ADP to comment on whether or not they can support or withstand the heavy wind and rain, but I do think the material selection and the rationale behind the material selection was really strong, and I'm supportive of that as it relates to the DPA 3 guidelines. I don't think I'm the person to speak to landscaping, so I'll leave that to Michael. With respect to the roof and mechanical, I think that the mechanical Cladding in the enclosure should contemplate directing noise upwards and generally remove the mechanical systems from the sight lines of the users of the roof deck. So I think that has generally been met, and where it hasn't been met, maybe could be considered together with staff. As it relates to the southern elevation, that the proponent has chosen to both clad and add murals to the southern elevation on a 0 meter setback infill project, I think is sort of above and beyond for what the property is and for the temporary nature of the infill. I think that the public art components there are fantastic, and that the murals will serve well for whatever temporary time frame they have to serve. I would say then to the public art component that those murals are certainly temporary, and it's nice to see that the public art contribution is somewhat separate. I assume that the art contribution proposed here is separate from the murals. I don't know if it's broken up into a value segment for the murals and a value segment for the public art. I would like to see that the proponent work together with the local public art advisory team to come up with a good solution for public art and make sure that it does meet the guidelines of the 9.2 section 9.2 of the public art policy. So I would like to meet with the proponents at some time to review their prospective arts. And that's the remainder of my comments. Thank you guys very much.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Up next, Elle, do you have comments?
Yeah, I do. So some of my comments are on the sort of pedestrian experience. So I guess the ground floor design, if we're looking at what the staff are asking to comment on. To me, the scale of the pedestrian experience feels just a little bit, I think, almost imposing. And I'm not sure if it's because of I think the way I read it is a couple things. One is the angle of the overhangs, and I think the angle of the overhang above the entrance kind of can potentially feel a little bit dominating for the pedestrian experience. So I think that's just something to consider, especially along with a lot of the verticality. So the vertical elements, the vertical lighting, the vertical, I think the way the colors and material palette works in the pedestrian level, which I think just kind of creates a potentially imposing feeling for the pedestrian experience. That would just be something I'd ask you to consider, whether it's a few more horizontal details, bringing in some of the softer materials like you see with the board and batten, and maybe referencing them there a little bit. I feel like, unlike the last presentation, this presentation has a lot of variety, which is really nice to see, I will say. But it's just how can you kind of add that variety in while still really considering the scale of what a pedestrian will be experiencing at that level. It was why I was asking about the recessed windows too. I really like the recessed windows in the renders. I think it does invite people kind of into the space a bit more. So as much as you can consider recessing those entrances, which will also just like bring people in as opposed to kind of up, I think would be something that would be really nice for the pedestrian. In terms of the materials, kind of similarly, again, it's so hard to comment when we're just looking at the renderings versus seeing your material palettes in person. But between the horizontal and vertical, there, I think if not done well, they could almost feel in tension with each other as opposed to kind of complementing. So I wonder if there's a way that you can reference them, whether it is bringing it into that same palette into the ground floor. Same with the back, the wall that has the murals. I think that it was kind of nice to see the white for a second. So perhaps even considering referencing that the lighter material, which I think I saw in the original DP. So I'm sorry if I am coming late to the party and you've moved away from that. That is just a comment, so take it with a grain of salt. And I think in terms of the rooftop, I was wondering about just considering including some things like benches that are permanent which could maybe act as a way to break up the space as opposed to breaking up the space through different levels, because then it can invite people who have all sorts of different mobility requirements to use it, but still gives a little bit of delineation. I've also lived in a building that had movable furniture on the rooftop, and it was very hard to keep it tidy. So I think having a little bit of permanent spots that give people kind of some indication of how it's supposed to be or how it's envisioned, I think will be really helpful for people. And I think that was it. I didn't have too many comments about the art. I think the murals, I totally agree, are a great way to break up that one wall. And done really well, they can be really a beautiful addition to the downtown landscape. And I think for the other two pieces, once you get further along in those development, just really considering how they tie into the building or the landscape. And so they don't just feel like an add-on, but really are celebrating something about the local landscape would be lovely, which I know the fern one is. And I think that's all my comments.
Wonderful. Thanks, Al. Over to Michael now for comments.
Hi, thank you. I'll be quick here. I think the sort of staying on the roof, I think I like that suggestion of benches or some more fixed elements to help kind of create the outdoor rooms or more define the outdoor rooms would be helpful. So whatever that element, if it's a bench or just something a bit more vertical to help define those spaces. I think that the provision of some sort of outdoor kitchen or food prep area with the place to put a barbecue would be really a great thing to have up here and help people use this space. And then I think also having a rain cover, something that's more rain specific than the sunshades to part of the area perhaps associated with the outdoor kitchen space would also kind of extend the use of this site during inclement weather. I am also wondering, I do like the different materials and the use of the composite decking, but I am wondering about the durability of the composite decking. I'm just thinking about the strata having to maintain this. And I know that decking can, it's fairly sturdy, but I think that the slip proofness of the hydropress pavers is a bit more durable, and maybe that happens a bit more in the roof space. I think the green roof system, it's definitely a low maintenance system, and it adds good diversity and pollinator potential. I think, yeah, as you said, it will require irrigation though to be successful. And I think that the 6-inch system will retain more rainwater than the 4-inch. So there's a potential benefit there if we're looking to capture more rainwater. I think that for the offsite landscaping to be successful, it will require irrigation. And I think it would also, I think adding seeding beds or planting beds seeding or planting to the curb bump out areas would really help sort of enhance the activation of the building's public realm. And then regarding public art, I did like the idea of putting that in the bump out, the curb bump out space. I think that provides a bit more focus on the art. And I think there's a lot of murals in downtown, which are great. And I think murals on this are good as well. But I think having that sort of the 3D sculptural element in the bump out would be a positive. And I think going on kind of the butterfly theme, if there is the butterfly theme that's moved ahead, I would hope that those butterflies are representative sort of the native butterflies of Squamish and so represented that way. And I think if you were looking to tie it into the landscape, one way to do that would be to provide sort of native pollinator species in the planting bed around it, and kind of sort of complementing the butterfly with the plantings. I'll leave my comments there. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. We'll go over to Sarah now for comments.
Okay, so again, going to the rooftop, I would really encourage you to try and reduce some of those elevation changes. I don't think it's necessary. I think having some fixed furniture to provide some delineation would be much better for anybody with a visual impairment. Less tripping hazards, more understanding of where the furniture is going to be placed, and it not being moved around, particularly important for anybody with a mobility device to be able to not have to push furniture out of the way. And given also, if you're going to have some barbecue up there, is it actually would be nice to have a long fixed table, extended end on a picnic table would provide better seating than those round tops for somebody using a wheelchair. I would encourage you to potentially look at the screening material color of the mechanical. I think, again, it's hard to tell because we are not close to the material board, but that west sun in 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon is killer. And I think that the radiation from the metal, dark colored metal, to anybody seating next to that is going to make it pretty unbearable. So that's just something you might want to think about. You've got to have automatic door openers all the way through from the front entrance through into that bike room for people, moving their equipment is going to make it much easier and less dings in your wall. This one goes to staff. I think given the limited accessible parking inside, that there needs to be some consideration of accessible parking along Pemberton, and in which case you're going to need to have some hard surfacing all the way to the edge of the curb. So that's something that you should be considering, given the nature of this area is a lot of seniors housing. It's going to be highly used. So that's something to consider. And yeah, that's my primary comments at this moment. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sarah. And we'll go lastly now to Kim for comments.
Well, most has been commented on. I'd like to say that it's quite an improvement from the first round. So I like this, how it's evolved a lot. I mean, I think that trying to deal with the second story parking and keep it feeling at a building scale that's not an anonymous space is handled very well with the clear story windows that you're suggesting and the canopies. Your renderings kind of don't show that big black box on the roof, but it will be there. Can't trick us, I don't think. But anyhow, I agree with Sarah that maybe a softer color might be better. It's not going to really disappear just by being black. But in general, I think most comments have been cover the ground, and I think it's a great improvement and a good design for a difficult site.
Thank you, Kim. So that finishes up all of the comments. I'll just quickly try to summarize them so that they're on the record. And if I miss any or misstate them, please correct me. But starting with site plan and circulation, comments include ensuring that automatic door openers are installed to ensure that access right from the front doors into the bike room is eased. Several comments about considering the rooftop design, removing elevation changes, perhaps considering fixed furniture to delineate the areas instead, a suggestion to add long fixed table. Another consideration to add accessible street parking along Pemberton. So maybe something that staff can take away there and look at whether there's some improvements that could be made. In terms of the architectural design, so thinking about the screening of the mechanical area on the rooftop, a comment to ensure that the material considers soundproofing or sound attenuation, and as well the thinking about the color of it and the radiation from afternoon sun. So perhaps considering a different color there. A great deal of appreciation for the public art, for the mural component, and a request to ensure that the applicant and designer works with the Public Art Advisory Committee to ensure it meets all policy requirements. Some additional comments around the sort of imposing feeling of the building from grade, and suggestion that that could be improved by exploring changes to the overhang and an opportunity to reconcile horizontal and vertical elements. And I'll, if I missed something, maybe you can fill in at the end there. I think, another related to the rooftop outdoor area, another suggestion would be to consider the addition of food prep, kitchen space, barbecue to facilitate social gathering up there, and perhaps as well consideration of a covered area to extend use of this upstairs rooftop space into the off season. Again, with building materials, a suggestion to consider using pavers rather than the material that's proposed in terms of both durability and protection from slipping. And then lastly, around landscaping, request to ensure that offsite plantings have irrigation. Suggestion to look at adding seeding or planting beds to the curb bump out spaces with where the public art is, and to use a 6-inch irrigation system for the green roof. Those were the comments. Does that collect it? What are you laughing at?
It's a 6-inch depth.
Oh, sorry, 6-inch depth. Yes. Not 4 inches, 6-inch depth for the green roof. Thanks for the correction.
Yeah, maybe I will just add one thing if that's okay, or just clarify one thing. I don't want to suggest that you have to rethink the shape of the awning. That's because I know it has probably been thought of quite a bit. My comment is more on the combination of that shape with the shape that comes out of the front of the entranceway, along with the vertical elements that are at the pedestrian level. All of those together, I think, are what make it feel like potentially a more dominant experience for the pedestrian. So it's just it's that combination. So I'm not saying rethink that entire shape of the angled awning. The lights might be easier to rethink.
I can see some heads nodding in the room here, so I think that was a helpful clarification. Thanks, Al. Okay, so with that, I think it's time to provide a recommendation. Is there someone on the panel who would like to move one of the 4 potential recommendations before us?
About B.
Okay, I think we had Michael moving for option B. Is there a seconder? We got Sarah seconding option B. Can we see by show of hands if there's support for that? It looks, again, we have a unanimous decision. We recommend, please, that we recommend that the advisory design panel supports the project as presented and requests that the applicant work with staff to resolve the recommendations that we provided. All right, so thanks all. I think that takes us to the end of our meeting today. Could I have someone move to end the meeting? Sarah, thank you. And a seconder, Michael. So I'm sure we're all in favor of that. So thank you so much and look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, panel.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.